You think you understand the sky. You've looked up at it your entire life. You've been told what's up there, cataloged, named, mapped, measured, filed away into textbooks and museum placards and NASA press releases with reassuring titles. You've been handed a version of the universe that feels complete, ordered, finished, and that feeling, that quiet certainty that the cosmos has been accounted for, is exactly what just collapsed. Because Hubble didn't just find something new, it found hundreds of somethings that have no category, no explanation, no precedent anywhere in the existing scientific record. And the part that is being overlooked, the part that should be stopping every conversation on this planet cold, is not that these objects exist. It's that they were always there, hiding, in data we already had, in fields of sky we thought we'd already read. Let that sit for a moment. The universe you were taught to understand was never the real one. These anomalies, catalogued now in the hundreds, were not discovered by pointing a telescope at some uncharted frontier of deep space. They emerged from archival Hubble data, observations already made, images already captured, light that had already traveled billions of years to reach us, been processed, been filed, and been quietly misunderstood, or ignored, or both. And then, through a combination of new computational analysis and a deliberate re-examination of old frames, they surfaced hundreds of objects that don't fit the known morphology of galaxies, stars, nebulae, quasars, or any of the 17 formally recognized categories of cosmic structure. They aren't glitches in the sensor array. They aren't lens artifacts. They have been verified. And they are genuinely, structurally, categorically unknown. This is not a footnote. This is a fracture in the foundation. The data doesn't just suggest a change in our understanding of deep space cosmology. It confirms a total collapse of the previous model. Because here's what the previous model was built on: the assumption of completeness. The Hubble Space Telescope has been operational since 1990. Over 30 years of imaging, over 1 million observations. Scientists from every major institution on Earth have spent careers analyzing this archive. The catalog of known cosmic object types has been refined, peer-reviewed, cross-referenced with data from Chandra, Spitzer, WISE, and now the James Webb Space Telescope. The scientific community had, in good faith, concluded that while there were certainly more objects to discover, the types of objects, the categories, the fundamental structural vocabulary of the universe was largely known. That conclusion was wrong. Not partially wrong, foundationally wrong. And here is where the story gets strange in a way that most coverage is not willing to follow. When anomalies are discovered in physics or astronomy, the standard response follows a predictable sequence. You verify the data integrity. You rule out instrumental error. You check for known misclassification. You compare against the most extreme edge cases in existing catalogs. You publish with extreme caution, flagging the objects as unclassified or unusual, and invite the broader community to weigh in. That process happened here. The anomalies survived every filter. What emerged on the other side of that rigorous elimination process was not a neat, promotable discovery with a clean narrative. What emerged was a quiet acknowledgement in the scientific literature that there are now hundreds of confirmed cosmic structures for which there is no existing theoretical framework. None. The math that describes galaxy formation doesn't account for them. The physics of stellar evolution doesn't predict them. The models of dark matter distribution don't position them correctly. They exist outside the known map entirely. So what are they? That's the question everyone wants answered, and that's also where the scientific establishment has, for reasons that deserve scrutiny, chosen its words very carefully. The public-facing language has been measured. Intriguing. Puzzling. Require further study. These are the words of institutions managing a revelation too large to communicate cleanly. But behind that language, in the actual papers, in the peer discussions, in the conferences where people speak without press releases waiting to be drafted, the tone is different, because what these anomalies collectively imply is not a gap in our knowledge. Gaps in knowledge are expected. Gaps are found and filled. What this implies is a systematic error in the theoretical architecture we used to interpret everything we thought we already knew. If the categories were wrong, the conclusions built on those categories were wrong. Every model of cosmic evolution that used Hubble data as a foundational input, which is essentially all of them, now contains an unknown variable that wasn't accounted for. Hundreds of them. Think about what that means for the science downstream of cosmology, the age of the universe calculation, the rate of cosmic expansion, the distribution of dark matter and dark energy, the probability models used to assess the likelihood of conditions suitable for life elsewhere. Every single one of those calculations sits on a framework that just cracked. Not shattered, but cracked. And in systems this complex, in architectures this precisely interdependent, a crack doesn't stay local, it propagates. But let's stay with the anomalies themselves for a moment, because the details are where this gets genuinely unsettling. Among the hundreds of unclassified objects, several distinct sub-patterns have already been noted by researchers. There are structures that appear to exhibit a symmetry that has no analog in any observed cosmic formation process. Cosmic objects, broadly speaking, form through gravitational accretion, which produces characteristic shapes, spirals, ellipses, irregular clumps. These structures don't. Some show a regularity that would, in any other context, be the first thing a researcher would flag as artificial, not alien, not manufactured by intelligence. That's not what's being said, but artificially ordered in the sense that the degree of structural regularity exceeds what random gravitational and electromagnetic processes are currently understood to produce. That distinction matters enormously, and it is almost entirely absent from mainstream coverage of this discovery. There are also anomalies in the spectral signatures of these objects. The light coming from them doesn't match the emission spectra of any known stellar classification. It's not simply red-shifted or blue-shifted in a way that suggests distance or velocity. The spectral composition itself is wrong. It suggests either a process of light generation not currently in the physical record or a process of light alteration during transit that our models don't describe. Both possibilities are, to use the proper scientific term, extremely inconvenient, because both require additions to physics, not just astronomy, not just cosmology, physics, the foundational rules, and this is the part that is being overlooked almost universally in how this story is being told. The discovery of new cosmic object types would be remarkable but manageable. Science has absorbed new object types before, Pulsars were discovered, quasars were discovered, magnetars, fast radio bursts. Each time there was initial confusion, then classification, then integration into the existing framework with the framework itself, requiring only minor expansion. What's different here is the simultaneous anomaly across multiple independent variables. The morphology is wrong. The spectral signature is wrong. The positional distribution relative to known large-scale structure is wrong. All of these should be wrong in correlated ways if they're related to a single unknown phenomenon. But they're not fully correlated. The wrongness is, in some objects, orthogonal, meaning these hundreds of anomalies may not all be the same kind of unknown. There may be multiple unknown phenomena represented here. Multiple holes in the map, not one. That is not a comfortable thing to sit with, and so I want you to sit with it. Because here is the larger implication that almost no one is building to, and it's the one that changes everything about how you should understand what you're looking at when you look at the sky at night. The Hubble Space Telescope, the most celebrated and most scientifically productive astronomical instrument in human history, has been generating data for over 30 years. We have believed with tremendous confidence that this data gave us an increasingly accurate picture of the cosmos. The discovery of these anomalies means that picture was always incomplete in ways we didn't know. Not in the polite, expected, science is always advancing way. In the structural, the map has features we cannot currently explain and that change the meaning of the rest of the map way, which raises a question that the scientific community is not yet asking loudly enough. If Hubble's archive contains this much unexamined anomalous structure, what does the James Webb Space Telescope archive contain? James Webb is orders of magnitude more sensitive than Hubble. Its wavelength range extends into the infrared in ways that reveal structure invisible to Hubble entirely. Webb has already, in its relatively short operational life, produced results that are quietly straining the existing cosmological model. The discovery of mature, massive galaxies in the extremely early universe. Galaxies that should not, according to our current understanding of how long gravitational accretion takes to build large-scale structure, exist at that point in cosmic history. Webb found them. Webb also found atmospheric chemical signatures in exoplanet observations that don't fit expected photochemical models. Webb is already making the cracks in the framework visible, and now, knowing that Hubble's archive contains hundreds of anomalies that required a deliberate, directed re-examination effort to surface, the question of what a similarly directed re-examination of Webb's data might reveal is not a speculative question. It is a pressing one. It's happening now, and there is no reset button. Here is the thread I need you to hold on to, because this is the piece that connects everything. Scientific paradigms don't update in real time. They update on delay through a process of institutional resistance, generational turnover, and the slow accumulation of anomalies until the weight of the unexplained forces, a structural revision. Thomas Kuhn described this decades ago in The Philosophy of Science as a paradigm shift, and his observation was not abstract. It's a documented pattern. Normal science accumulates anomalies. The anomalies are initially minimized, explained away, filed under further study. Then they accumulate past a threshold. Then the framework breaks, and a new one replaces it. What Hubble's archive has now produced What these hundreds of unclassified objects represent is an anomaly threshold event, not the paradigm shift itself, but the moment where the anomaly count becomes impossible to responsibly minimize. The moment where further study is no longer a sufficient institutional response. We are at that moment right now. And the reason this matters to you, personally, in a way that extends well beyond academic cosmology, is this. The Drake equation, the probabilistic model used to estimate the number of communicating civilizations in our galaxy, uses parameters derived from our cosmological understanding. The Fermi paradox, the unresolved question of why, if the universe is as structured and life-permitting as our models suggest, we have not detected signs of other intelligence, is argued through the lens of our cosmological model. The entire infrastructure of how humanity answers the question, "Are we alone?" is downstream of the model that just fractured. If the anomalies represent unknown processes that alter our understanding of how frequently certain conditions arise, if they represent structures associated with phenomena that change the energy budget of local cosmic environments, then the inputs to every calculation about life in the universe shift, not randomly, in unknown directions, which is another way of saying we don't actually know what we were calculating. So, what is the hidden motive? What is the structural reason this information isn't landing with the force it deserves? It's not a conspiracy. It's something more mundane and more insidious. It's institutional inertia combined with communication incentive. Major scientific institutions, NASA, ESA, the universities that house the researchers doing this work, are funded based on the credibility of their past conclusions. Their entire value proposition to governments, to grant committees, to the public, rests on the narrative that science is advancing, that each discovery builds on the last, that we are getting closer to a complete picture. A discovery that implies not advancement, but foundational error is not a story any institution is structurally incentivized to tell loudly. So it gets told quietly, in papers with careful language, at conferences with controlled audiences, filtered through press releases written by communications teams who understand that we found hundreds of things we can't explain at all, and they break our models, is not the message that sustains funding cycles. And so, the translation that reaches you is intriguing anomalies requiring further study, and you move on with your day. But the anomalies don't move on. They stay in the data. They stay in the archive. They stay in the sky. They have in fact been in the sky since before there was anyone alive to look at it. The light from some of these objects left its source before our solar system existed. It has been traveling through the universe for longer than the Earth has been a planet. It arrived at Hubble's mirror, was converted to data, was filed in a server, and was not understood. And only now, through a specific, targeted effort to look at the old data differently, did it reveal itself as something outside the known. That is not a metaphor. That is the literal sequence of events, and it should make you wonder, with genuine uncomfortable intensity, what else is already in the data we have, not in the unexplored frontier, in the processed, analyzed, published, peer-reviewed record. What else is hiding in the files because the framework used to analyze them wasn't capable of recognizing what it was looking at? The universe does not owe us the courtesy of fitting the models we build to describe it. It never has. Every time in the history of astronomy that we have been certain of the complete structural vocabulary of the cosmos has produced a counterexample. And every time there has been a period, sometimes short, sometimes decades long, during which the counterexample was known to specialists and unknown to everyone else, during which the map had a feature that didn't fit, and the cartographers were quietly arguing about what to do with it, while the public navigated by the old version. We are in that period right now, not approaching it. In it. The hundreds of anomalies Hubble found are not the end of this story. They are the surfacing of it. The part that was supposed to stay submerged, filed under further study, managed at the institutional level, translated into language safe enough to not destabilize the funding narrative, has broken the surface. And what breaks the surface cannot be pushed back down. Not anymore. Because the computational tools that enabled this re-examination of archival data are not proprietary. They are increasingly available. The archive itself is publicly accessible. The era in which the gatekeeping of anomalous data could be managed by controlling who had access to the raw observations is ending. Independent researchers, university teams without the same institutional incentives to soften the language are going to run their own analyses. They are going to find more. And the more they find, the less sustainable the intriguing requires further study framing becomes. It's happening faster than the institutions can manage it. And so here is the realization I want to leave you with, because it is the one that I think changes how you stand under the night sky from this moment forward. You have been living your entire life with a map of the universe that was drawn, using tools we now know were missing entire categories of what they were measuring. Every picture of deep space you have ever seen, every documentary about the age of the cosmos, every confident statement about the number of galaxies, the rate of expansion, the distribution of matter, the probability of life, was produced using a framework that contained unacknowledged gaps, not theoretical gaps acknowledged and worked around. Structural gaps, the kind that only become visible when the anomalies pile up past the point of management and someone finally looks at the old data with new eyes and says plainly that hundreds of things in the existing archive have no explanation. You are not looking at a complete picture of the universe. You never were. And the version you're going to be shown next, the updated one built to accommodate these anomalies, will also not be complete. But it will be different, meaningfully, perhaps radically different. The shape of the cosmos, the story of how it formed and where it is going and what it contains, is being rewritten in real time by data that was already sitting in a server, already processed, already filed, already forgotten. The sky did not change. Our ability to misread it did. And if you want to track every signal as it surfaces before it gets translated into something manageable and safe, subscribe, because this story is only going to get stranger from here.